Jim Nabors stunned the world in 2013. He married his 38-year partner at the age of 82. His existence was unknown to his fans. They saved $4.8 million in taxes because to the wedding. It also reopened old wounds though. Jim's partner is finally telling their tales 7 years after Jim passed away, the true cause of their 40 years of concealment. Rock Hudson and Jim's friendship was ruined by the Hollywood incident. Everything changed with the liver transplant. You will never see Goomer Pyle the same way once Stan tells you about their secret lives. Jim Nabors was born in the little Alabaman town of Sylacauga on June 12, 1930. There were only 8,000 or so residents at the time. His grandma lived with his family in a modest 3-room home. Life was difficult during the midst of the Great Depression. In Alabama, over 25% of people were unemployed, and many families were barely making ends meet. The household next door was no exception. Just getting adequate food was a daily challenge for them. Jim learned to maintain his strength and humility from growing up in such atmosphere, teachings that he carried with him throughout his life. Jim suffered from severe asthma in addition to poverty. Treatments for asthma were different in the 1930s and 1940s than they are today. He would frequently be confined to bed and have trouble breathing. For a boy growing up in the South, it was difficult that sports were out of the question. But Jim resorted to music rather than succumbing to loneliness. Singing became his passion after he began doing it as a way to kill time. The asthma that seemed to be a curse ultimately led him along the route that would bring him fame. Mavis, his mother, put in a lot of overtime serving tables at a truck stop in exchange for any tips she could obtain. Fred, his father, accepted any job he could get. Fred eventually rose to the position of police officer in the municipality. Although it didn't pay well, the job provided some stability. They raised chickens in the yard for meat and eggs to help put food on the table. The family survived because to their ingenuity and hard work. Jim also learned early on the importance of working for every little amount. Jim revealed his latent talent in high school. He sang in the church choir and joined the glee club. The quiet asthmatic boy's large, powerful voice was unexpected. However, everyone was taken aback when Jim sang. Teachers and choir directors allowed him solos because of the strength of his baritone. He gained a new confidence that would serve him well throughout life, and his voice became the focal point of neighborhood gatherings. Jim studied commerce at the University of Alabama after graduating from high school. He was attempting to take the safe route. However, something changed in college. He made his acting debut after joining the Delta Tau Delta fraternity. People took attention when he appeared in their performances and acts. Jim was comfortable on stage, hilarious, and natural. He was drawn to performing despite his concentration on business education. His college experience demonstrated that he was more than just intelligent. He was charming and talented. Jim needed a job when he finished school. He relocated to New York City and started working at the UN as a typist. The stage was a long way off. He felt isolated and far from home as he put his reports in a large, chilly office. The air pollution in the metropolis exacerbated his asthma. His dream was to work in the entertainment industry. He was just trying to make ends meet for the time being, though. He had to depart New York due to his health. Jim took a position at WRGP-TV, a local television station, after relocating to Chattanooga, Tennessee. He was a film cutter who edited together advertisements and news segments. Although it wasn't glamorous, he learned about the backstage operations of television. He would imagine that the chairs were an audience as he rehearsed his routines in the deserted studio late at night. His asthma forced him west in the late 1950s. He moved to Los Angeles after packing things. He was employed by NBC there as a film cutter. At night he played at small clubs during the day. He lived on peanut butter sandwiches and hardly slept. But he persisted, certain that if he put in enough effort someone would take notice. Jim developed the performance that would transform his life at the Horn, a tiny nightclub in Santa Monica. He portrayed an awkward, bashful rural guy who would stutter onto the stage before shocking everyone with a loud operatic voice. The combination of hilarious and amazing singing was adored by the audience. Producers began attending his gigs to see what all the excitement was about because they were so successful. Comedian Bill Dana saw Jim perform one evening in 1962. Bill got Jim a slot on the Steve Allen program because he was so impressed. After performing his hillbilly routine, Jim's voice astounded the audience. The response was enormous. All of a sudden, producers and agents were calling Jim. Finally, after years of hardship, his time has arrived. Andy Griffith visited the club one evening. He was astounded by the performances of his neighbors. He made him an offer to appear on the Andy Griffith program once. Goomer Pyle, a charming but dim gas station attendant, would be portrayed by Nabors. Everything was altered by what should have been a single appearance. Everyone was won over by the Nabors' charm. The producers were immediately aware that they had discovered something unique. The Nabors' life was irrevocably altered by their chance encounter in a little club. American comedy was likewise altered by it. People were enamored with Goomer Pyle when he initially aired on TV in 1962. His catchphrases Shazam and Goey gained popularity almost immediately. These statements were memorable because of his wide-eyed expression and heavy Southern drawl. Children began to say, "Go to the playgrounds." Adults used it in the workplace. Politicians were powerless to stop it. These amusing expressions become widely used. They appeared in cartoon strips. They appeared in advertisements. They even influenced clothes and toys. The words were innocent and enjoyable. They avoided overt references to God or magic, which was crucial for television at the time. People were moved by Goomer's uncomplicated happiness at a time when the nation was rapidly changing. His remarks were filled with amazement and a sense of safety. Goomer's popularity grew to the point where CBS was left with no other option. Goomer was added as a regular on the Andy Griffith Show within months of his debut. Hundreds of mails were sent in by fans requesting more Goomer. People admired his good nature, his sense of humor, and the way he counterbalanced Andy's somber sheriff persona. Soon some of the show's most cherished elements were Goomer's stories. He even began to deprive other characters of their attention. It was uncommon for Nabors to go from being a guest star to a regular. It demonstrated how much Goomer's goodness and comedy resonated with people. Goomer's achievements continued after that. In 1964, CBS took a risk. They gave him his own show, Goomer Pyle USMC, which was unusual in those days. Few side characters ever received their own series, and spin-offs were uncommon. However, the gamble paid off. Goomer Pyle USMC was an immediate hit when it debuted on September 25, 1964. People fell in love with Frank Sutton's hot-tempered Sergeant Carter and Jim Nabors' innocent, gentle Goomer. Every week, spectators laughed at the combination of Carter's persistent annoyance and Goomer's generosity. Before receiving a series of his own, Goomer had only made 23 appearances on the Andy Griffith Show. That demonstrated how well-liked he was. There were 5 seasons of the show. Fans were given 150 episodes. In the Nielsen ratings, it never fell below 10th place. Just behind Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, it was the second most watched show in America at the time of its conclusion. It was the synergy between Sutton and the Nabors that created the magic. Every moment was entertaining to see because of Carter's loud rage and Goomer's naive charm. Aaron Rubin and Sheldon Leonard realized they had something unique behind the camera. Inside a Marine base, they captured the essence of small-town America while filming in California. People continue to purchase the DVDs and watch the reruns now. Jim Nabors appeared in nearly all of the scenes. At the time, that was uncommon. Across the nation, his persona came to represent benevolence and generosity. The show's total avoidance of discussing the Vietnam War was one unexpected aspect. America was embroiled in that horrific battle from 1964 to 1969. However, Goomer Pyle made no mention of it. CBS and the producers sought to provide a respite from the stress and sorrow of everyday life. They aimed to make the show feel like soul-satisfying comfort food. They so concentrated on Carter's yelling, Goomer's good heart, and amusing mix-ups. It was successful. For the most of its existence, the show remained in the top 3. In order to escape the terrible realities of the times, families all around America tuned in. However, most spectators were unaware of the suffering that Jim Nabors endured behind the jokes and grins. He had to conceal his sexual orientation. Being gay could ruin a career in the 1960s. Numerous staff members and co-stars were aware, and some of them mistreated him as a result. They joked cruelly. They did not include him. They behaved as though he wasn't welcome. His neighbors were forced to keep quiet out of fear that he would lose everything if he spoke up. Imagine pretending to be happy for millions of people while harboring that worry on a daily basis. Ron Howard and others acknowledged years after that they seen the struggles of their neighbors. They observed the cruel remarks and the aloof demeanor. They witnessed how he wasn't treated with the same respect as the performers who were straight. Nabors continued, always courteous and professional. Though silent, his strength was present. His narrative brought to light the difficulties faced by gay actors during the supposedly heyday of Hollywood. It also demonstrated the bravery required to persevere. Nabors put in more effort than most celebrities. On top of all of that, his days were 12 hours long. He frequently got started before the sun rose. He had to commit up to 15 pages of conversation to memory each night. He didn't have time to relax or simply be himself. On weekends and vacations he played in concerts and nightclubs. Perhaps to avoid the worry and anxiety that followed him, he made an effort to stay occupied. He was concerned that even at the height of his celebrity, all would be lost if the truth were revealed. No one anticipated Jim Nabors' 1965 foray into the music industry. As the silly, lovable character that made people laugh, Goomer Pyle, he had already achieved fame. However, he shocked fans by revealing a side of himself when he joined with Colia Records. Goomer's high-pitched drawl was nothing like his deep operatic baritone. He recorded around 30 albums in the ensuing 10 years. He sung pop, gospel, and country songs, but the majority were romantic ballads. Making a lot of albums wasn't the only factor in his success. The Billboard Hot 200 chart had 12 of them. Additionally, 3 of his albums achieved gold status between 1968 and 1974. Jim Nabors sings Love Me With All Your Heart. His album from 1966 even peaked at number 34 on the Billboard list. His rendition of The Impossible Dream unexpectedly became a hit in Australia in 1968, making it into the top 30. It was unbelievable to fans who knew him only as Goomer. In a way no one had anticipated, he gained appreciation for his music and voice. Simultaneously, Nabors had a relationship with Carol Burnett that went down in television history. Nabors made an appearance as the featured guest on the inaugural episode of The Carol Burnett Show in 1967. It wasn't an isolated incident. He was the main guest at every season premiere for the following 11 years. Until the end of the show in 1978, audiences agreed when Carol referred to him as her lucky charm. It was hard to overlook the friendship and chemistry between Burnett and his Nabors while they were on the same stage. His visits always offered heart, comedy, and memorable music, so people looked forward to seeing him. Nabors found time for the concert despite his hectic schedule. His participation was interpreted by fans as a sign that the season was off to a fantastic start. In his own variety shows, his Nabors likewise stole the show. The Jim Nabors Hour, which ran from 1969 to 1971, combined comedy, music, and people he had worked with before. In 1969 and 1974 he also starred in television specials. His dancing was a different story, but his singing was always excellent. He frequently ridiculed himself for his lack of rhythm, which his Nabors were the first to acknowledge. He attempted an audacious dancing routine during a live performance and ended up tearing his pants on stage. Rather than feeling ashamed, he joined the others in laughing. The incident turned into a highlight of his charm, demonstrating his willingness to make fun of himself. Nabors established what would become to be one of the most cherished customs in American athletics in 1972. At the Indianapolis 500 in Indiana, he sang the song "Back Home Again." It was so well received by fans that he continued to return. In total, he performed the song 34 times live between 1972 and 2014. Tens of thousands of spectators were singing along with him as his deep, powerful voice filled the speedway. He was supported by the Purdue Marching Band, and the occasion always gave me chills. A video of his performance was shown prior to the race, even though his health prevented him from attending in person. The occasion was filled with heartfelt farewells and tributes as he performed it for the final time in 2014. Fans viewed him as one of their own, and Nabors had become an integral part of the race's identity. In the late 1970s, Nabors didn't strive to follow the latest musical fads. Rather, he moved to Ranwood Records, a label that emphasized classic pop and easy listening. While the rest of the world was switching to rock and disco, Nabors continued to do what he did best. Because of his recognizable voice and poignant songs, his devoted followers continued purchasing his recordings. In order to provide Nabors with a place where his music could continue to flourish, Randy Wood and Lawrence Welk built Ranwood. Hollywood was a dangerous place for actors who didn't fit the stereotype that the film companies had constructed for them in the late 1960s and early 1970s. An openly gay person's job could be ruined in an instant. Jim Nabors, the adored Gomer Pyle, and Rock Hudson, the attractive celebrity who everyone thought would make the ideal leading man, were at the heart of one of the most well-known scandals of that era. A joke that went too far connected their names. Funny invites to a fictitious wedding were sent out by a bunch of gay pals in Huntington Beach. According to the invitations, it was Rock Hudson and Jim Nabors' wedding reception. To parody the names of their neighbors, they even called it Hudson Rock Pile. However, what began as a personal joke quickly became widely known. The news quickly spread throughout the national press after gossip columns picked it up. A rumor like that might ruin a career back then. The two men were so terrified that they were never seen together again. To keep their employment, they put their friendship at risk. The narrative took another odd turn years later. According to a former Vogue model who wished to remain anonymous, she attended the alleged wedding. She stated that she was just 15 years old when she and a friend of Rock Hudson's attended what she believed to be a typical man-woman wedding. Rather, she claimed to have found herself in a Belgravian living room with candles. Male supermodels and designers filled the area. A priest married two men, and she watched in disbelief. I can't recall what Rock and Jim said to the priest, but she stated, "I was an innocent 15-year-old at the time and was stunned by the whole thing." This story revived the old rumor, whether it was real or not. The public were even more interested in what had actually transpired, as it demonstrated how perplexing in private life was for gay celebrities at the time. The rumor caused a great deal of harm. Jim Nabors was on the verge of landing a major new CBS show. He was already well known from Gomer Pyle, USMC, and the Andy Griffith Show, but CBS pulled away as the marital controversy gained traction. A star embroiled in a gay scandal was not someone the network wanted to jeopardize their reputation for. Nabors missed out on a significant job advancement. To make matters worse, he and Hudson ceased communicating. They used to go on vacation together and have fun, but these days they avoid each other. Even a picture of the two guys together may be detrimental to their careers. Hudson and his neighbors were forced to publicly refute the rumors. They said that the narrative was based solely on a jest invitation. However, the harm had already been done. Their handlers put a lot of effort into making them appear like straight stars, and they avoided one another. It was advised that Nabors go out with performers for the evening. Thinking that would backfire, he declined. Actors were even relocated to separate neighborhoods by the studios to quell rumors. All of this caused a great deal of stress. Both men lived in constant fear of being destroyed by a single mistake. For years they were plagued by the scandal's shadow. As if that weren't enough, Nabors experienced a scary event at a Houston Astrodome performance. There could be more than 60,000 people there. A woman who had razor blades tied to her fingers approached him as he was performing. His arm was cut by her and blood spurted out. Due to his connections to Gomer Pyle, Marines hurried to his defense. They got him to safety by forming a human barrier. He was brought to the hospital in need of immediate medical attention. He was deeply scarred by the attack. Following that, he developed a phobia of crowds and increased his awareness of his safety.
The actual Jim Nabors off stage were completely different from Goomer Pyle. His coarse words surprised interviewers and friends. Within 2 minutes, the 84-year-old Nabors used an F-bomb in one of their chats. Throughout the entire interview, he maintained his gentle southern charm. Fans who had a private encounter with him found him genuine and humorous, but many were taken aback by the contrast between the actual him and the persona they were familiar with. Nabors suffered as a result of his years of concealing his true identity. He was always under stress, attempting to hide who he really was while defending his career. Health issues and anxiety were caused by that pressure. Sometimes the burden of being both a private outsider and a public hero was too much to bear. Nabors gradually moved away from the Hollywood action. In Hawaii, he achieved serenity during the late 1970s. In 1979, he purchased about 170 acres on Maui and constructed a modest home. He could at last be himself there, away from the cameras. He developed a close-knit circle of friends and lived with his partner. Jim Nabors' life was drastically altered in July 1975 when he met Stan Cadwallader. Jim was enjoying his 45th birthday in Hawaii. Stan, a 27-year-old Michigan firefighter, had recently relocated to Honolulu. The Ala Moana shopping center was the location of their initial encounter. They ate dinner together that very evening because they were so close. Even though they were 18 years apart in age, they clicked right away. Following in his father's footsteps, Stan was living aboard a boat and had recently begun working for the Honolulu Fire Department. They were unable to be separated after that night. Stan was more than just Jim's companion. He became his best friend, business associate, and confidant.